Hello, welcome to the official AFC Wimbledon podcast, which this season is brought to you by Fire Door Compliance Consultants Limited, inspecting fire doors to keep you and your properties in compliance with the law. Head over to fdccltd.co.uk for more information. Now, joining us today is a true legend of the game, the man who helped shape the identity of Wimbledon Football Club during its meteoric rise from the 4th division right to the 1st. This man created the ultimate disruptors of football, the original disruptors of football. It is the legend, the former manager, motivator, master tactician, Dave Bassett.
Hi, Aaron. You okay?
I'm well. Dave, it's so good to see you. And looking so well. How's your health?
Yeah, I mean, I've got one or two problems. I had a bit of a prostate problem, but the cancer's gone. But I've got a bit of a bladder problem as well. And, I've just changed a bit. I'm up and down, have some good days, have some bad days where, the anxiety creeps in sometimes because I get bored a bit.
It's so nice to see you back down the lane. I know I bumped into you a couple of times. It's always good to see you out and about watching Wimbledon.
Yeah, I've tried to get down there a few times, more so in the last couple of years. And, I was sort of helping when Johnny Jackson was appointed. I was on there and, I sort of felt that he was a good guy. And I felt it was just nice to go down there. I've got a chap friend of mine that, drives down there. So that's quite convenient. It is a bit of a long journey from where I live. And, it's usually hour and a quarter. But, of course, if the traffic and Fulham or Chelsea are playing and you get caught round there, then it's an hour and three quarters. So I do go to other games and that because I live in quite a good catchment area where I can go to Wickham because I played there in my younger days and I'm welcome there. I go to Watford where I was ex-manager, not my best manager in Bishop. And there's Quick QPR, Chelsea, people like that. So sometimes I just pick out a game and Brentford and think, yeah, I'd like to go and see that. And luckily I can manage to get tickets and go and enjoy it.
There's nothing like coming home, though, to the lane.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it. Do you know, before we start off, I want to say, you played Port Vale at the weekend. Some of the best pictures, if not the best pictures at the game, were yourself and Bobby Gould in the main hallway up at Plough Lane.
Yeah, with the Womble.
With Hayden, yeah. But it's the way you made him laugh, and it was so nice to see him up about laughing, smiling, and in really good company.
Yeah, that's right. Bob's a good fella, and that he told me he's got a bit of onset of dementia, and that, but not. He says the tablets are working quite well. I think they've improved, but no, he's a character, and it was good to see him. And it was I was sent pictures and had nice pictures. Let's hope they put him up in the boardroom or the museum or something.
I'm sure they will. Let's get straight to it. Tell me what it was like playing for Wimbledon Football Club.
Well, I came with Allen Batsford from Walton and Hersham, where we'd been very successful, along with Billy Edwards, Dave Donaldson, Kieran and Roger Connell. And coming to Wimbledon was part and parcel of Allen asking me, and I had a lot of respect for Allen. And it was great to come. It was going to be in the Southern League, which was a different league from where I'd played, because with the amateur days it was Athenian League or Isthmian League and that type of thing. So we came, and it was an amazing, successful 3 seasons before we got into the league. And Wimbledon weren't particularly in a position at that time. They'd been very successful in terms of winning the Amateur Cup and the Southern League they'd amalgamated into. And it worked well. And I think with the squad of, David, Ian Cook, Bob Stockley, Dickie Guy, Mickey Mahon, Selwyn Rice, and Jeff Bryant. There was some good Wimbledon players there, and we was a small squad, and it worked out. It knitted very, very well in terms of that. So, it was a new challenge, and it really went well.
Tell me about Allen Batsford. There's going to be a generation of supporters, me included, who won't remember what he was like. What was he like as a character? I see these pictures of this man. There's the tribute board on the other side of Plough Lane as well, on the east stand, the back of the east and the southeast corner of the ground. I want to know all about him.
Allen Batsford is a good character. He was a great manager because he managed Walton and Hersham, and we had a very successful team there. We won the Amateur Cup for Walton and Hersham for the first time, and then he came into Wimbledon. He was identified. But Allen Batsford was a football man. He was an Arsenal man left. He didn't make it at that particular level, but he became very hard. Allen was dedicated to the job, and he loved what he was doing. He was a strong man, and he believed in his principles, and you knew that he supported you. He could be very loyal to you, but all at the same time he could be disciplined and regarding your play and what he wanted. And he helped me because he pinched me from Hayes. I was playing from Hayes in the Athenian League and took me to Walton and Hersham. And before then, I'd never really been involved in coaching. And then when we went to Walton, Allen was doing some coaching and work, and I could see that the work he was doing was better than any other manager I'd worked from at that particular time. And it matured that I broke into the team and then become captain. And it was obviously marvellous going to Wembley and picking up the cup and everything else. But as I say, he was a workaholic. He was having to work, but his main thought was football. And he was there. I enjoyed Allen. You knew where you stood with him, and there was no messing about. He was a winner. He wanted to win football matches, and he stood by his players and supported them. But at the same time, if you wasn't up to the standard, Allen wasn't frightened to leave you out the team and move on. You'd had to move on. So it was good for me, and as I say, I was happy to come and join Wimbledon because Allen was coming, because I felt he was a good manager that was going to be successful in terms of whatever he wanted. He was a nice man. He was married to Maureen Batsford, and they were a nice couple. And Allen was a genuine fella, and he was, as I say, he was fully committed to the job that he was doing. He had strong principles. Really, unfortunately, whether it come later, but he resigned from Wimbledon, and he shouldn't have done. Ron Nodes, after we'd lost at Swansea, and Jimmy Rose brought Allen in, and there was a bit of an argument because Allen wasn't even full-time at that time. And
what did he do? Outside of football, what did he do?
He had a wine bar at one time, and that was later, in actual fact. I'm just trying to think what Allen did outside football as well. He had a job, but I
say this because I'm fascinated by Wimbledon Football Club history. I'm really I find it incredible, and you see all these old pictures and you see all these bits and pieces, and in researching today I saw a picture of Allen Batsford sat at a desk with schematics, with like drawings for a building. I wonder if that was maybe something to do with old Plough Lane, or if that was another business he had, or whatever that was. But it's such a fabulous photo.
Yeah, no, I actually haven't seen that one.
I'll have to dig it up for you.
Yeah, dig it up for us. Allen was very diligent in what he did, and I've gelled with him, and I got on well with him as captain. I think I did a good job for him in terms of the spirit in the team, and he enjoyed that, and he let me have some leeway in terms of where other managers might want to keep you quiet or just do everything you want. He accepted, and he accepted players like Roger Connell, who could be off the wall on what he wanted to do in terms of playing, and sometimes Roger, when in training, could sort of kick off or something like that. But he dealt with it. He understood Roger's personality and his character. And again, he knew Dave Donaldson. He knew all of us. He got into us and knew what made us tick, and brought us all together to think that we could be successful. And we believed. We built up this thing at Walton, and we come. And as I say, with the boys from Wimbledon who knitted, we soon sort of started to, and I think they saw a different manager to what they'd been used to at Wimbledon, and they could find that they follow him. Allen didn't push. He it was one of those things, as I say, he was part-time, and he wasn't really happy with that, and it was a difficult time, and Ron could be difficult, and Allen, unfortunately, in my opinion, and that he resigned at that time, and I don't think he should have done as such.
Tell me about you sort of doing your coaching YTS under Allen Batsford. Wimbledon win election to the Football League, and you sort of become an assistant, and you start plying your trade and learning your trade as a coach. What was it like to learn from him, and to learn when there's such a huge change going on at the football club? Wimbledon finally elected to the Football League.
Well, I mean, I was interested in coaching even when I was 21, and I did my prelim badge as a coach, and I was interested in football. And as I say, a few of the managers I played for around the Hayes time and St Albans and things like that weren't really teaching me anything. They were just going and doing the running, keeping you fit, but there was no tactics in terms of, how we're going to play, what your role in the team is, what you're going to do with set plays like free kicks, corners, etc. So Alan was geared into that, and it was good. I felt that, this man knows what he's doing in terms, and I learned from him. You always learn from other people, but the thing that happens when Allen Batsford resigned, in actual fact, Ron Nodes offered me the job. I was still part-time and playing in that last season, and that the team was old then, and myself and one of those like Dickie and Cookie. Well, Cookie couldn't play because he was with the bank, and Dave Donaldson. We were coming to the end, and really it needed an evaluation. Well, Ron offered it to me whilst I said no, I wasn't ready for it. I'd like to be a manager, but I'm not ready to take over because I didn't have enough experience, and it was sensible to do that. And because Dario was at the club at that time on the youth and full-time working, which, Alan was miffed about, there's somebody else in the club and surely the manager should be, which is right, the manager should be. So, but what happened is when Dario, I said to Ron that I didn't think I was ready. He then went to Dario and said, well, I'm going to appoint Dario. And he approached Dario and said, look, I'd like you to work with Dave Bassett. I think he's got potential. And Dario was very open-minded. I'd played against him a lot when he was at Sutton United. There was some right battles with, Walton and Hersham and things like that. And luckily, I then had to sort of go full-time, and sort of take a decision. I had an insurance business, and I thought, well, this is either if I don't take it to be Dario's assistant, I'm possibly going to miss out on having an opportunity to be a coach. So I was able to leave the business in the hands of a guy I'd employed and was working, and he was going to look after it. So if things didn't work out, I could pop back there or be back there, and I used to get in early some mornings to help out in the early days. And as I say, I became assistant to Dario, and I learned a lot with him. Different type of fella, but we understood one another. And as I say, I learned from him. He'd been working at Chelsea on the youth. He'd been at Derby County, and he taught me a lot of things. And as I say, he was a good coach to learn from. So we ended up that season staying up, and then the following season we got promotion, and then it was a bit backwards again.
Well, I mean, let's not just gloss over this promotion because this is big. Dario leaves to go to Crystal Palace in 1981, and then you get the call from Rod Nodes again to say, Dave, I want you to be my number one. Why did you feel you were ready?
Well, I was assistant at that time, the manager, and I was with the reserves. I went with the first team some of the time. I was coaching, and I wanted to. I felt it was there. Well, Ron actually said, when Dario, he was moving to Crystal Palace, and he was taking Dario with him. So he basically said, well, you got the manager's job's yours. And that was in January 81. And the good thing was that I was working with a lot of the young players, the reserves, the Wally Downses, the Glyn Hodges, the Paul Fishington, the Mark Morrises. These were there, and I was doing a lot of work with them, and they were good young players, and I just felt that we could promote these players, and I just thought, well, this is we get in deep and we go for it, and which we did. I mean, funny enough, we played Port Vale was my first game, and we won 3-2 there, and we went on a really good run, and actually got promotion. But of course, then Sam, for some unknown reason, wanted to test, and Sam was a complex character. I mean, I learnt more later, but he then wanted to let things. Steve Parsons was sold to Leyton Orient. Tommy Cunningham was sold to Leyton Orient. Stevie Galliers went to Crystal Palace, and the team I got us up there was being decimated. And it wasn't a surprise because I was then putting the young kids in, but it was too much for them to comprehend at that particular time. And of course we had injuries. Alan Court broke his leg which was a massive miss. Mick Smith injured his ligaments. Steve Jones had to retire. So out of that team that I had that got promotion, Sam has sold about 4 of the players. 3 of them were out. So you all of a sudden you're 7 players short in the team, and there was no money. Sam was saying there was no money for players and everything else, and he was testing the situation at that time, really, and he was very clever. But luckily, with that we got relegated on the last game of the season. When Walsall stayed up on goal difference and we went down. But it was in a blessing in disguise because we'd signed Francis Joseph, who was doing very well for us. And the second half of that season, by Christmas, I think we were sort of rock bottom. But we did win games and we came back. And Corky was going to be fit. And we brought in some new players, 1 or 2 like Kevin Gage were ready to step up. Gary Peters came in and did a good job as captain for a couple of years for us. And again, if the people like Mike Morris, Wally Downs, Hodges, Fishington had played a lot of games since I'd taken over. They'd played a few games under Dario. They'd had a relegation for the second half of the season, then got relegated, so they learnt a lot. So all of a sudden that next season, most of them had played not far off 100 games, and they were all sort of 19, 20, 21 as such. And Besant came in on £1,000. We found him. I was recommended to him. He came in and did a good job and took over from Ray Goddard. I say Kevin Gage and Gary Peters played at the back. Mark Morris started to get into the first team. And Steve Hattock, who came from Fulham, he fitted in at that particular role. And we were on, and people like Hodges, Downs, Corky was fit, so that helped a hell of a lot. We were able to go, and of course we then pushed on and we won the 4th Division Championship.
I mean, how do you build a side that goes and absolutely steamrollers a division? 98 points is quite the total, and then goes and does it again.
Yeah, well, the game that season, it was a defining one because we were up the top of the league and we were playing with a sweeper. I'd seen Italy and that was working, but we then seemed to be stumbling about it. We seemed to be what's the word? We were overplaying. We didn't feel. So I decided that I'd been with Charles Hughes in the England amateur side as well, and Allen Batsford, and they played a more direct style of football. So I changed it, and I said to the players, we had a fortnight's break because there wasn't a game, and I said, look, I've decided to go. We were top of the league. We'd lost a couple of games, and we was either second or I think, so they were being, and they bought into it. Wally and Glyn, they weren't happy. They wanted to play more football, but I said we're going to get the ball forward, we're going to be more direct, we're going to look to be more forceful, and we're going to really play man for man with it. And but to the word, they did, and luckily we beat Darlington in our first game 1-0, and then we won another game. So all of a sudden they've won 2 games in that period. If we'd lost them, then possibly the thing could have then disintegrated in that they didn't want to play that way.
What was the secret behind rapid promotions? Was it tactics? Was it team spirit? Or was it just madness? Because that football club at that era, I mean, every day it felt like something else was going on. And of course, I'm looking back via books, via media, whatever I can find on the internet, and listen to stories from people like yourself and from Dickie Guy, and trying to understand, and from fans, what actually went on in the 80s. Because you say, Ron Nodes goes to Palace, Sam Hammam comes in, and it all changes.
Yeah, well, it was part and parcel of captain. I always had a good spirit, even at Walton. And when I come to Wimbledon, they were a bit more straight-laced. I mean, they were all had their suits on and this, that and the other. Well, we turned up with long hair and, wearing jeans and all that. Alan didn't worry about that at that particular time at all. And then we created a spirit. So when that 3 years of coming through the Southern League, we had quite a good spirit in the Wimbledon team. There was a bit of going on and everything else. And we encouraged the youngsters to to do it. They were full of enthusiasm. They used to get in training early because they enjoyed the environment of being with one another and having a crack and a laugh and doing things that, just schoolboy stuff, really, But there was a spirit because, the training ground want the best in the world, the stadium want the best in the world. So we had to get a spirit, and that's what we built. And that's what I did when I was the reserve manager with the younger players. I'd had the spirit, and when we went away in the minibus to play in the reserves games, we used to have a laugh and enjoyed it. And I joined in, and we could mixture. And the good thing was I played that way because I felt that we could do that. And I convinced them that they could do that, give it a try. And they were good footballers. They were a lot better than a lot of people ever give them credit, because that team never got the credit that it should have done, because what it achieved and in the time it was done, it was amazing. In my opinion, it's one of the most, probably in the top 6 success stories in of all sport. But it doesn't get that credit at all.
Why?
Because the media were turned on us. They went and said we were aggressive, we were too aggressive, we were thugs, and it wasn't good for football, and the long ball wasn't going to work. Well, it worked. We finished 6th in the top division, beat Manchester United twice, won at Anfield, beat Tottenham, and all these things. We finished 6th and got to the quarterfinals of the Cup.
People talk about John Beck being the sort of real innovator of long ball.
No, he came after us.
He came before.
Yeah, he wasn't there before us. You're joking, Cambridge United. That was after we'd done what we'd done. He copied us, and he employed a guy called Neil Lanham, who was very close to me. Got close to me. He was on about data and everything else, and he used to come on the games and count the amount of crosses we get, where we lost the ball, shots on goal. Shots, whether set plays, how many from corners, all this. So we had stats even back in those days.
So were Wimbledon Football Club football's original innovators, because data is where it's at right now?
Yeah, we did data. We were, as I say, and we had Vince Craven who were there. He used to cut all the videos up of what we could get of the opposition, and also we cut up videos of like AC Milan and various things of how the back players play, and we showed the players there. So they came. We were there before. Arsenal wouldn't even do it. In actual fact, Vince Craven knew Don Howe, and Don Howe came down to sort of pinch the ideas that are there. So we wasn't particularly on nutrition or anything like that at that stage or anything, but we had our own data. We knew exactly where we lost the ball and everything else, and where we were successful. And we then, the percentage of goals from crosses and finishing and everything else. So the players knew then that we were giving them information and proving it, and also showing them on video.
Do this for me. Take me back and tell me what Plough Lane was like.
It was Plough Lane was a tidy little ground. It was getting a bit dilapidated as time was going on. We had a good pitch. We had a good groundsman because we wanted to. It was, I enjoyed playing there. It was a good place to play. The crowd was, usually 3,000 or 4,000. Probably less than that because our crate's there. We didn't get the gates on the way up, really, as I say. When we come out the 3rd division, I think our average gate was about 3,300. Compared with a lot of other clubs we were playing, who had got infinitely more crowd and were paying bigger wages than ours as well. And that, so again, I was responsible for the wages and everything else to do the contracts as well, which managers don't do now. Again, I was running the club for Sam because he insisted that I did that, looked after it. I went to the boardroom and, sometimes Stanley Reed bringing up about the toilet rolls or something, hadn't done work.
What was he like?
He was Stanley. He was a nice man, a gentleman. He was a good guy to be around. He was nice.
Boys used to mess around with him, didn't they?
Yeah. They liked him. He loved it. He was local. He was an ex-Chelsea fan, and he came on the board, and he liaised very well. He was a really nice man, and good for the club to have. He was a good figurehead.
Efan Okoku said that during the Premier League era, he'd be in the dressing room. There's a famous video of him singing a song going into the dressing room.
Oh yeah, he did.
Here we are again.
Here we are again. That was it. Yeah, that was
But
it.
they said that they used to fiddle around with his hearing aid and wind him up and then change the frequency on his hearing aid so he couldn't hear things. It was too loud.
Yeah, that's right.
quiet.
Yeah. There was always things going on. Stanley was a character, and and he loved being with the boys. He enjoyed it. He travelled with us. And
What was he like as a chairman to you?
oh, he was very good, very supportive. I mean, obviously Sam was the main man. Stanley did. I mean, Sam listened to Stanley, obviously, from time to time. But it was Sam's baby, and what he said went. Really, but no, Stanley was good. We had some good directors: Peter Cork, Joe McKelligot, John Lelliot. They were decent people.
You get promoted again, and in June 1984, you decide to go to Crystal Palace, but you reverse the decision. Take me through that week in your life.
Well, we'd got, as I say, I'd got promoted straight away in 81. We were relegated in 82. Then we went again, won the 4th Division Championship, then came second to Oxford in the 3rd Division. And my contract was running out. And Ron Nodes knew that. And Sam hadn't particularly got round to offering me a contract. And Ron phoned me up and said, because I'd known Ron from the same school. He was older at Roxworth Manor in Harrow, and I was in the same class as his brother, Colin Nodes. And Ron ran a youth team at that time, and I played in that youth team as such. So Ron had all there, and I'd also got Ron to Wimbledon, really. I'd introduced him to Bernie Coleman. Bernie Coleman had spoken to me about that. He was in charge of the club. He'd been left with it. He was looking for a purchaser. Did I know anybody? And Ron at that time was keen on football, and he was running Southall Football Club. And I rented offices from Ron, and I said, well, why don't you fancy Wimbledon and this, that and the other? So I arranged for him to meet Bernie Coleman. They got on, and Ron decided to take over Wimbledon. So, that was in the Southern League days. And I mean, in fairness, Ron helped us in that last season by going round the country, because it wasn't like automatic promotion from that league into there. You had to get votes, and he did that and did it. But again, he become tired of Wimbledon. He thought it wasn't going to go anywhere, and the fans and everything else, and decided to go to Crystal Palace. Hence, that was how it sort of materialised. But again, it was. What happened is, when Ron coming back to Ron again, he wanted me to be manager of Crystal Palace, and he spoke to me and he convinced me that the crowds were bigger there. Palace were a bigger club. It was going to go more places than Wimbledon, everything else, and he was then preparing to pay me. And so I decided, as Sam hadn't really sort of faced up to it at that time of what was doing, but I went out to a football writers' dinner that night on a Friday, and just talking to one or two people, and I went home and I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought, I've got a good team here. I've built a good team at that particular time. Again, Besant was in the side, Kevin Gage, Mark Morris, Brian Gale, Nigel Winterburn was there. A great signing. We had Stevie Galliers, Wally, Hodges, Ketteridge. We was a good side. Stuart Evans, Corky up front. We were a good side, and I just thought I think this side's better than Crystal Palace. Why am I leaving them? And we had a great spirit and that, and I was thinking it was really just doing that, and it just dawned on me, and I thought, no, the door. Stanley, I remember Stanley saying to me, when you're going, the door is still ajar, sort of thing. And I spoke to Stanley, and he was going to speak to Sam, and I changed my mind, and I phoned up Ron. And Ron took it well. The media tried to blame Ron, that he'd tried to tuck me up or sell me short and everything else. That wasn't the case. It was just a factor that I felt that it was the wrong time to go. So I ended up signing a 3-year contract with Sam at that time. And again, we then went up to the 2nd Division, finished mid-table and had a good run in the Milk Cup. We'd knocked Nottingham Forest out over 2 legs.
I bet Brian Clough wasn't happy.
No, he wasn't particularly happy.
He wasn't fond of Wimbledon and the crazy gang. I mean, that's what the stories I've heard. And
he wasn't. He used to see that's the team that play with the ball in the sky and that. But we did well because we knocked them out the FA Cup the following year, and that So they did our record against Forest was very good. So it was basically at the time that I felt Sam was taking his time and was not sure, and I'm thinking, and it was the right decision to go back. But Sam never forgive me for it.
You get promoted to the First Division. I just want to go back when you started off as manager of Wimbledon Football Club in the Fourth Division. Did you genuinely believe this football club could reach the First Division, the heights of the First Division?
I didn't even think about it, to be quite honest. That when you're in the Fourth Division and everything else, and you go in, it's gone, and then you get that promotion straight away. You think you're on the way, but then that year was really hard. When we were beaten in the FA Cup by Enfield and an amateur side who were a good side who I knew. It was men v boys because the kids we had in there just weren't good enough. The fact that we built, but they learned at that particular time, they learned so much and took it on board, and everything else worked that way. Again, we went back down, and the ambition was to get back and try and get into the Third Division again. I didn't know whether that was going to work out, but it did, and we won the championship. And then the team was the way it was playing. It was very automatic. The players knew the jobs. They all knew the jobs. They'd been with me. They'd had a season and a half of playing with me in the way that I wanted to do that, and I'd sold them that it was successful. And of course, they bought in as they're winning the games, they're getting bonuses, and they're enjoying it, and they're enjoying the highlights of it of being there. But as we went on, and we did, we just went for it. I didn't sort of think, say to the players at the start of the season, look, we're going to get promoted or wherever it is. We're going to treat every game as it comes along. We're going to have some setbacks. We're going to have success. It's up to us to incorporate it. And as they grew in confidence. They never thought that they would get to the First Division. I mean, I think the final season I stayed there. We had a squad of 23, and we had I think it was 7 players who had played in the Fourth Division, Third Division, the Championship, and the top league. And out of that squad, we'd produced 13 of that 23 were through, because Dennis Wise had come, and he was still the youth, because he had a youth year left in him. Andy Thorne was on the scene by that particular time.
Vinny?
No, Vinny. No,
Vinny came in '86, right?
Yeah, Vinny came after we got promoted to the top team. Fash we bought before the transfer deadline. We needed something to push us over the top at that particular time. So we'd, as I say, 13 players out of 23. Wimbledon had produced in that their own. That was an amazing record. Manchester United talk about all the players they did. Again, Kevin Gage, youth, Brian Gow, youth, Mark Morris, youth, Andy Thorne, youth, Hodges, youth, Wise, youth, Wally Downs, youth, Galliers. Oh no, Galliers was bought from that, and that. So we had amazing situation where the ride for those players like Corky and Wally and those and Gagey that played in the Fourth Division, Third Division, Second Division, and the top league.
There's so many players that came through non-league as well. Pluck from non-league. Dave Bassett is someone that you mentioned.
Yeah,
the one I wanted to mention is someone who we lost.
Carlton Fairweather. Carlton came on. Yeah, I mean, I went. Billy Edwards had mentioned to me, he was at Tooting and thought that Carlton would do that. And there, one Saturday afternoon, we went over there, and I liked what I saw. So that was useful.
He was very loved as a man by Sunderland fans, by Wimbledon fans. I mean, he spent a lot of time at Sunderland Football Club.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, he was a lovely boy, Carlton. it was a baptism for him to come into Wimbledon at that time because the crowd, the team were very compact in there, and it was a closed shop in a way. You had to sort of go in. I mean, Fash came in and he wasn't really into the crazy gang and a lot of the stuff that they did and all that. He just was himself, but he was part of the club. You know, he just said, no, that's not me. I don't want to mess about with my clothes or your clothes. You know, so they accepted him. You know, he was there with them when they went on the pitch on Saturday and did the job as such. Yeah, so it was one of those things that the crazy gang came from. Tony Stenson, he worked for the Sun. He was following us and he worked in Wimbledon. He took a shine to us and, he just came on a couple of trips with us and thought we were crazy, because we're in the coach on the way home.
Where did it start, though? Like, where was the first sort of iterations of this kind of behaviour to deem this
well, I don't know. It went. Sam tried to keep it going, which they did. He put the patent on the crazy gang and that. And the thing. I mean, we used to take a radio with us to the. When in my days, and they did it as well. And the loud music and the buzz and all those things. We knew that it irritated and agitated the opposition. And about it, again.
There's that story of Brian Clough smashing up Vinnie Jones's radio, apparently.
Well, he didn't in my period. We had played them in my period. We'd played them 6 times, and we were still the same. Clough never come in our dressing room. He got told to leave in no uncertain terms. No, that's. I think there's. That may have happened, but I don't think it happened. I think it's a good story from Forrest's side, because sometimes after dinner speeches get embellished, and it certainly didn't. As I say, we played them 6 times, twice in the FA Cup we won, so it was 5 times, twice when we beat them in the League Cup, and then the following year the FA Cup, and then when we played them in the league.
How did you keep a lid on things? How did you make sure the boys were focused, especially with the fact that this whole crazy gang thing is rumbling on? You got it in the papers, people are talking about it, people are talking about that us versus them mentality. Wimbledon are deemed a rough side, they're deemed as a side that will come and sort you out in your backyard. But how do you keep a lid on things and make sure that there's still that focus, there's still that discipline from the boys to get their basics done?
Well, the essential part was they knew when we were working. There was no messing about when we were working and serious on the pitch with me. This was, before training, after training, there were things done in the car park, and people would say it was schoolboy pranks, but it was all a little bit of mickey taking. And any new player coming in, Dave Bassett came in and he came on a motorbike, which you're not meant to do as a pro footballer, and they filled his helmets outside, and there they put all talcum powder in his helmet and all things there, lifted it onto stones, and it was done. But they knew when they was working, they're serious. They knew when I lost me, I was going, that they didn't step out. And when I had a great relationship because I could mix with them as well. If we go on tour at the end of the season, I'd still be with them and having a laugh and enjoying things. I wouldn't be with them all the time because certain times you got to leave them and let them get on with it and everything else. But
did they ever clash?
Pardon?
Did the players ever clash?
Not really, no. It was a fully tight. I mean, there was 1 or 2 people like Ian Holloway found it difficult to when he come to Wimbledon. He
famously said he really struggled.
Yeah, he struggled. I mean, Ian's a lovely fella and he's done well. I think he came from Bristol Rovers, and at that time he wasn't ready or there. He was there. I think in a way it did help him because getting through that period of time he was then going off to Brentford and that. I think it may have made him harder. I know he's a bit critical of Wimbledon at that particular time, and there was a time where Dave Bassett wouldn't sign a contract, and I brought in another goalkeeper to do. And the players sort of rebelled a bit because they made life difficult for the new goalie. He was coming in on there, and they wanted Bassett because he was the part and parcel of the team. He'd been there, and they were showing their support for him.
Do you think the crazy gang would survive in today's football world?
Well, no, because the way that it'd get blown up. with the things that they did. I mean, as I say, when Glyn Hodges played for Wales, we were preparing for a game, and we were down at Bournemouth, staying at Bournemouth for a few days training, and I went over to watch the game in Cardiff and Wales and everything else. When I come back, I've looked up, and all of a sudden there's a bed out on the balcony, and I thought, hello, that looks like my room. And what they'd done is they'd raided my bedroom and put all the chairs and that and my clothes in the lift and everything else. So, that would get carried away now, and things would be different, And they say that, football wouldn't have worked. Well, it worked at that particular time. I'm not saying it would work. The game does change. But again, a lot of it was not based on playing sideways, backwards. It was looking forward to attack. We went on, and we were prepared because we more or less played man for man. We wherever the player was, if you were the left back and I was the right side, you were up against one another. That was your battle with that particular player. You don't know. You did. There was things that you did to cover up and help one another, but you were responsible for your man. And they did it. They had it. I mean, in the end, I had it working clockwork. That last year in the top division, at the end of the season, it was near. We went to Anfield and won 2-1. We went to Manchester United and won 1-0 with 10 men. We won a lot of good games all at the start, and I'd done the work. The team just needed a little tinkering, and they knew what to do. They were bought into the way we played and believed in it, and they enjoyed it, and they enjoyed the fact that we knew that a lot of the teams that wanted to play us played us didn't like playing against us because they knew you were going to have to work hard. This way they couldn't there because we made the game fast. We didn't allow it to be slow. We were there. We were dangerous at free kicks and corners. We scored goals. We had a long throw. We moved up. The back four knew how to operate and play offside and this sort of thing. And they didn't like it. And, of course, a lot of the other managers were complaining about it. This is not good for football. It's not entertaining. People like Cloughie, football should be played on the ground and all the things. And the media bought into it. And that's why the story doesn't get the credit that it does.
Why did you leave?
Because my contract was running out and Sam was messing me about. And now I look back, I think Sam wanted me to leave because he couldn't understand that they were all went. There's only one Dave Bassett, and my wife heard Sam say to Stanley Reed, "Why are they all singing Dave? I've done this club. I've provided the money and all this for the club." Well, that team I built them, he sold for over 10 million odd quid. Besant went for 900,000 to Newcastle. So did Andy Thorne. That figure. Dennis Wise went to Chelsea for 1.6. Brian Gale went to Manchester City for 325 grand. Kevin Gage went to Aston Villa for 250,000. Nigel Winterburn went to Arsenal for 3. That's sold. Hodges went to Newcastle for 300,000. So that was it. And
was his ego hurt?
Yeah, it's his ego. Yeah, he worked there. Yeah, and I mean, I was being paid peanuts. Sam treated me and the players diabolical. I worked and we did the wages. Sam wasn't honest with me how rich he was, and I should have sussed it, in terms of that. But he didn't treat us, so it was one of those things where I decided, well, I've got to move. I didn't want to go.
Did it ever surprise you then, looking on from afar, with the way it unravelled for Wimbledon Football Club in the 90s when he was at the helm?
Yeah, well, time moved on, didn't he? He got Bobby Gould, and the Bobby bought Don Howe, which was a good move. But the players, Bobby and Don said to me, they tried to change one or two things, and Sanch and Besant were saying, we don't want to change that. We're successful. And Bob and Don Howe was sensible enough not to force them to try. They might have tinkered a little bit, but they didn't want to do. They knew what free kicks and corners worked for them and all this sort of thing, and the enthusiasm and everything else, and that,
But the way that you say Sam ran the football club,
yeah.
Are you not surprised then with how it ended up with with the club struggling?
Well, I mean, Sam was, he still can't understand why, when he's made all that money and sold the things. I mean,
have you had conversations with him?
Yeah, I've had some conversations.
Does he regret with how it ended?
No, he doesn't think he's done wrong. He thinks that the fans were wrong to him because he did great for the club. He don't look at the fact that he took away a lot of money that were to the fans. So it's difficult. He's one of those. I could argue with him. I did have arguments, and then when I've seen him, it's no point in discussing it. I mean, I look back and, for what I did, was the payment and the way he looked after the players and everything else. Because later on, he had to pay big money, and he did pay big money to other players at that stage. That ain't their fault. That was in the future. But he didn't look after that team or anything else. And most of the team have got no admiration for him or, likeness for him. Because
why would he come back then, Dave? Because he did. A couple of weeks ago, he tried to come back.
Oh, yeah, well, I think that was just...
Why?
I just think he wanted to... I think that was just he'd like to see the Wimbledon. He hasn't been there. I think he just wanted to see perhaps what the stadium was like and everything else. He wasn't looking to come back and try and buy the club.
No. But what I'm trying to understand is, do you think he wanted to be welcomed back like a hero?
Oh, he would have liked to. Yeah, of course he would. But of course, I don't know how much it's hard. The feeling... is too much there. Yeah. It's just because they feel that Sam didn't look after the club. He looked after himself, and he's a clever man. He's a complex. I mean, I was stupid. I should have realised more as time went on, sort of thing. I did brilliant. I mean, he says to me, "You were the best manager ever because you managed everything." He said, "You were the best manager I had. You with me?" And, what can I say? It was a great period, Sam. What our efforts there. My job was to do what I did, and I did it, but I did it on a shoestring. And, I think I got paid absolute peanuts for it, really. Looking
back at your time, what are you proudest of most from your time at Wimbledon Football Club?
Well, I was at Wimbledon, as a player, assistant manager and manager. So I was at Wimbledon for about 13 years. So it's a big chunk in football there. And, of course, I'm fond of that. I'm also very fond of Sheffield United, where I did a similar thing. I'm loved up there and treated, tremendously well at Sheffield United. So I'm lucky I've had two clubs. But Wimbledon saw me on the way, and it was a great time. I had a great time with it. I enjoyed working with the players. It was a fun time. It was a real good period. Even when I was playing for Wimbledon, it was good fun with that 3 years winning the cup runs and everything else, and a good bunch, good friend of people, like Ian Cook and Dickie and Bob Stockley and people there, Jeff Bryant. We got on really well. So I enjoyed the playing, and I enjoyed being assistant to Dario, which was a good decision not to have taken the job. But I was 3 years later, I was more ready. I still wasn't ready completely, but I was infinitely in a better place to go. And fortunately, with the work and that with the players. So I didn't see the Wimbledon story unfolding and thinking Ron was on about getting promoted in 10 years, and I thought, yeah, right, Ron, that's right, easier said than done. But a lot of people don't realise how hard it is to win football matches. It's very hard. There's
something about this football club doing things in 9 years. They're going from Division 4 to Division 1.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, as I say, it's an incredible record. I mean, when I leave it, and everybody, loads of people in football have said to me, that story is unbelievable. Football people have said to me, but of course it still doesn't get. They don't want to give Wimbledon any credit because it's a sort of stigma as far as they're concerned that at that time.
It's the greatest football story ever told. The most incredible football club.
It is, yeah.
Take me back to when you leave the football club. A year later, they beat Liverpool by a goal to 0 at Wembley. They lift the FA Cup. Your successor, Bobby Gould, masterminds that. How do you feel when you watch it?
I was envious. I wasn't jealous. I'd have loved to have done that. I thought we should have won it the year before, and that was my fault because we got to the quarterfinals and we'd been away for the previous games. The first game, I think we went to Bournemouth for Sunderland. We went this, that, and the other, and I got a bit carried away. And we went to Spain, and there was two matches. Reza Mataz and Steve Cooper, his son, came with us, and BBC came with us and filmed us and all that. and I regret that. I should have said that game we're staying in London and we're going to train and not go over to.
Is that when the report got pushed in the pool?
Yeah.
Was that Martin Tyler?
No, it was no. I don't. It was some other bloke, an agent, I think it was.
I'm sure there's a video of a reporter being pushed in the pool somewhere I've seen.
Yeah, I don't.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, it was a bit of a fault because we lost 2-0. I think we'd have won the cup that year. It was just a little bit where I was a bit naive and got caught off my guard, and probably, as I say, we'd been away for the Everton game with the cup holders, Sunderland, and what we'd done, and really it got hyped up, and that's a regret that I did, looking back, that I shouldn't have done.
Running out of time, I wouldn't mind finishing with a quickfire if you fancied.
Yeah,
just a few questions. Worst trainer in your time at Wimbledon?
Alan Cork.
Most underrated player?
Underrated player. Galliers.
Funniest player in the dressing room?
Wally.
The opponent you most loved facing?
Nottingham Forest and Norwich.
And the most talented player that played under you at Wimbledon Football Club?
But it's a difficult one, that one. Sorry. Wisey wasn't then, but turned into a good player. I knew Wisey was going to be a good player. I'm sorry there. Glyn Hodges.
Do you know what? We'll go for one more. Biggest wind-up merchant in the Crazy Gang in your era?
Wally.
Lovely stuff. Dave, one more. How proud are you to see Wimbledon's football club back where it belongs, on the other end of Plough Lane, but in that fantastic ground, doing what they're doing, flying high in League One right now, in a really good going in a really good trajectory, in a really good direction?
Yeah, I mean, Johnny Jackson, in my opinion, is doing a great job. And the main thing is he hasn't got the best players. He's got some of that because we always didn't have the best players. But he's got a work ethic that team works hard even when they're without the ball, and the enthusiasm, determination, self-belief he's put in that team, that they go and they keep themselves in games because they work for one another, and so they must have a good spirit amongst them. So he's got that. He realises at Wimbledon the main thing is spirit, because they're in a situation where they can't pay the wages of a lot of other clubs, so they're competing against, particularly in League One. So, and they're going to lose players as well. So they've got to understand that is part and parcel for the team. So I think that's brilliant. Yeah, it's good to see the stadium. The stadium's a lovely little stadium, and I do worry sometimes. Probably the cost of that is probably a bit heavy compared with other clubs to keeping a stadium like that. But there's been a belief, and where they've come from to do what they've done is amazing. It's a tremendous story again. I mean, the Wimbledon story, what we did and where they come from, and then going out the league and the disappointment of that, and then coming back all that way, is a success story at all. I mean, there's two stories there in one, isn't there, really?
Well, we're back on a path that you've trodden before. Dave, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the official AFC Wimbledon podcast. Really, really appreciate your time and your memories. It's been an absolute joy.
Yeah, we dived about, probably not quite chronologically in the right order, but as long as everybody understands. But no, it's been a pleasure to come and talk about those days. They're memories that I've got, and they're always wonderful memories to live with and think of the times, because it was a great period in my life for 13 years with a club that I loved and I'll always, be fond of, like Sheffield United. They're my two clubs. I've been to other clubs. They've been good clubs as well, but they were two magic places for me.
Dave, thank you so much. That's it for this episode of the official AFC Wimbledon podcast, brought to you by Fire Door Compliance Consultants Limited. Head over to fdccltd.co.uk and get yourself booked in with Dan today.